everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Tracy Ring. I'm a Managing Director with Accenture. I lead our Life Sciences Artificial Intelligence practice, and very, very excited to introduce my panelists today. So we'll go ahead and do a quick introduction, and I'll ask each of the panelists to not only introduce themselves, but also share their favorite application of AI.
Hi everyone, my name is Keri Smith and I'm a business builder. So I've been a founding member of several digital startups in the space of data analytics and AI. And I'm at Accenture. I'm a managing director. I run our financial services and cloud-first portfolio for our applied intelligence group. And wanted to also share something that I'm grateful for. And so what I'm grateful for today is just the ability to be able to get involved and to be able to contribute to community at a larger scale. And I'll have my panelists introduce it and I'll share what I'm excited about on AI.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristin Apple. I'm the president of Linus. We are a healthcare consultancy that focuses on everything from technical life science all the way through consumer wellness. And I am really grateful for the opportunity to be here today, to be a part of this conversation. I know a lot of us have talked about that first panel and the importance of that conversation. And I'm excited to share how data and AI can play a role in that as well.
Thank you. I'm Anastasia Christianson, and I'm head of artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced analytics, and data at Pfizer. And I'm grateful every day for what I do at Pfizer and for having the opportunity to contribute to delivering breakthroughs that change people's lives. I'm also grateful to the organizers here for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to contribute. And one more thing, grateful to be in this country. I'm a naturalized citizen, and I love the idea of living the American dream and having the opportunity to contribute to changing the world.
Wonderful. So Keri reminded me that we were going to talk about being grateful first. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to Keri, who's doing a better job at moderating than I am. So I'd love each of the panelists to just share their favorite application of AI and how they see it in our lives.
So things that excite me about AI, if I look at kind of the pattern of AI over time, I would say I think there are two main dimensions. One, it continues to make life more convenient, and then also continues to find new forms of value creation. So in terms of making life more convenient, definitely coming out of the pandemic, or just during the pandemic as well, being able to order groceries online, and just being able to use apps to be able to do that. And maybe I have gone a little bit more extreme in terms of some of my Amazon ordering, but that's some part of my self-care activities. But thank you to AI, being able to have that convenience that don't always have to go into physical stores to be able to get things done. And then an example from creating new forms of value. I think about when I was in college, not too long ago, but the way that we would do kind of research papers and things like that, I just find access to information is just a lot more easier right now. Just being able to find topics leveraging search engines, and just being able to very quickly access new forms of information. So thankful to AI on those two dimensions.
Keri, you talk a lot about being grateful for AI. I love that you brought up grocery delivery, as many of us are. But from a realistic and a serious perspective, I'm grateful for AI for helping us all become more knowledgeable. We're going to have a conversation today about health and how that really plays a big role and how AI can really help us change our habits, be more healthy, talk about self-care, and I'm grateful for all the ways that AI has come together for that. My favorite AI application right now, if we're going to talk about augmented intelligence, Spotify for breaking up my doldrums of music.
I don't think I can compete with that. But I actually think, for me, I think AI will be the great equalizer. As much as that may sound as, maybe it's only the privileged who have access to AI, that's not true going forward. Everybody has access to AI capabilities. Everybody can learn AI. But most importantly, I think AI enables us to make data-driven decisions that are non-biased. And I think that's the reason why I believe it's going to be the great equalizer. That's probably as close as I'm going to get to a favorite application because I got too many of them.
Perfect. I think today's discussion is all about equality, so thank you for getting us started. So I would be nothing if I didn't start us with a little bit of data. It's the world that we live in and the one that I love. And so I thought it would be interesting to just look at research and say, what on the macro level do we see as far as women working in and embracing AI as a career? And so the World Economic Forum in 2020 found 26% of women in AI. Stanford reports an AI index, which reports the number of women on the tenure path, just around 16%. Forbes found 14% is women. And no matter how you slice it, we're nowhere near 50%. And so for me, it's concerning, and albeit much different than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We have an awful lot of work to do. I'd really love to ask our panelists, why gender diversity matters. Why is it important to understand how gender equity could be a major mitigation point around bias, and ask everyone to really weigh in their particular expertise.
Great. So I strongly believe that anyone can have a great idea, great insights, and that we should be tapping into the kind of full potential of humanity. So ignoring like 50% or whatever the math is now of the population, this doesn't make any sense. So one is just a practical point of view, right? We want to harness all the insights and the power that's there. I think another part that I would say on it as well, what I find with, when you talk about AI or artificial intelligence, sometimes in the technology field as well, sometimes there's an intimidation factor that also people feel, well, you have to be really bright, or only a certain type of people can kind of enter this field. And I remember from my experience in high school when I was doing advanced physics as well, it was like, oh, this is such a tough topic, and whatever it is. And I was thankful to be able to have a teacher who broke it down into components, and I just realized that anyone can actually learn anything. It's just about access to tools and things like that. So one, it's kind of like a duh statement, like obviously like we need to bring more women into this, and then I also think it's a mindset thing where people, not just the women themselves, but people have a certain view of who can enter this field and who can be successful, which I think we need to break that down, unpack it, and make it more accessible.
Switch up the order.
Smart. So back to my AI being the great equalizer, I think it is the great equalizer for healthcare, and it is also the great equalizer for accessibility to anybody. And I'm thankful to our male colleagues here who are here actually and supporting this, because I believe we all need allies, and we need our male allies to support their wives, their girlfriends, their sisters, their daughters to get involved in healthcare, to not be afraid of mathematics and science and any of the STEM fields. And I do believe that anybody who sets their mind to it can actually achieve mathematical education, a STEM education, and can learn about AI.
That's great. And as we think about equality and data, that'll only help us make better decisions with healthcare. How can we give the right patient the right therapeutic, right? And if we're not thinking about women in this equation, we are going to make poor healthcare decisions. And I know, Anastasia, at Pfizer, you're all thinking about this, and at many pharma and life science companies across the entire world. How do we have the right populations in our clinical trials? How do we have the right sample of people when we're trying out new therapeutic approaches? We need to think about this. It's really important, and I'm glad we're a part of this conversation today.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually at Accenture just wrapped up a study with 1,500 organizations surveyed, and the concept of AI fluency being such an important factor, and to the point of what Keri and Anastasia are saying around the ubiquity of AI, a large-scale resources org decided to cross-skill everyone in the organization, not everyone in IT, not everybody who was above a certain level. Everyone completed AI fluency training, and an individual whose role was working on preventative maintenance in oil rigs and working around there, it really clicked. And they went home and wrote an algorithm that saved their organization $1.5 million. And I think that's the importance of really thinking that AI is within reach for everyone, and it is actually really all around us. And so I'm very excited to have this cohort that believes the same that I do, that it's an exciting time. I'm going to pivot just a little bit, and Anastasia, Kristin tugged on this a little bit, but if you might, why are we now seeing AI as such a prevalent trend? Turing has been around forever. AI is not anything new. Would you be able to give us a little bit of a sneak peek, not only of why it's important, but also how Pfizer is using AI?
Thank you for that opportunity. So you're right, AI is not new. In fact, the term was coined back in the 1950s, I think 1955. But why now? Why are we hearing so much about it now? Because we have so much more data. Technology's more advanced now, and we have so much more data. A little statistics, you mentioned data earlier, 90% of the world's data was generated in the last 2 years. Think about this, 90% of the world's data. 30% of that is in healthcare and being generated in healthcare continuously. So at Pfizer, we were able to use technology and data and artificial intelligence to accelerate the development of our vaccine and our antiviral therapy, take down the timeline that it takes to develop it from years to months, so that we were able to deliver the COVID vaccine and the therapeutic within a matter of months from when we started. We used AI in the early discovery phases to identify the right sequence to go after. Our scientists were able to use technology and AI to accelerate developing the drug by being able to do in silico experiments or computer experiments, so that we could zero in on the few molecules that had the most chance of success, instead of having to the delay that it takes to test millions of molecules. Even in clinical trials, we were able to use AI to choose the sites where we were conducting clinical trials, to monitor patients who were taking the vaccine, to actually make sure that we reduced the amount of reaction that people were having to the lipids that coat the vaccine, and in manufacturing and then delivery to all over the world. We were able to use AI to accelerate all of that.
Kristin, I'm going to pivot to you. Thinking about the consumer health side, products like Apple Watch, Oura Rings, etc. How are the abilities around the devices that we live with driving to better outcomes, and how do you see that as an integral part of how we now live?
Sure. So there's so much happening in the digital health space, whether it's Apple Watch releasing many different interventions on their latest release, to Oura Ring, who is telling us to, this is your readiness score. You are going out today and you are going to feel great. So they're telling us how to think, how to do, and how to be. We also have applications, helping us understand, what's happening with your heart rate, what's happening, how many steps are you taking. It's helping athletes and those who want to be athletes have a better day, like Strava. There are so many applications and ways that AI is really driving our behavior and ultimately really empowering the consumer. We talked in the first panel about the Sarahs of the world, the females across the world that are using data to help make decisions. And AI is really helping us do that all.
Super insightful, and I wanted to take a broader view of health with this panel, and have Keri weigh in a little bit. We would be remiss to say that part of our health is not our financial health, and how we think about that, not only from the perspective that for many years banking, capital markets, and financial services has been at the forefront of AI, but just having a little bit of a perspective. As FSI has really been trailblazing the path, how do you see the propensity of consumers to share more data in the space of financial services, and how there might be some linkages with trust?
So yes, I would say in financial services, as you said, right, they're a pretty mature industry in terms of leveraging kind of data analytics, AI. I would say in kind of some of the more recent times with I would say consumer advocacy, as well as people kind of, as you said, being willing to share information, but also sometimes getting frustrated. Hey, I'm giving you all of these insights about myself, but like you're not really using it. So we've seen with some of our surveys that people are saying, hey, I'm willing to actually give you access to a lot more information, but please use it in a way that's meaningful to me. And what that means is we're seeing also a rise of we want to work with companies that, yes, you care about your profit, obviously you want to stay in business, but show me that you care about me, show me that I am known. So if I'm Keri Smith and I'm a client of a financial services institution, I want you to know about me. I'm interacting with you, and I don't need to have to educate you each time I'm interacting with you, right? Can you kind of understand based on my past behaviors? As well as then I want you to help me with my financial goals, right? I want to also see that you're helping me progress towards my goals, and that I'm actually better having worked with you. I think the other thing that we're seeing also is a rise of, as I'm looking at my dollars and what I'm investing in, I want to invest in companies that have similar principles to me. So how you treat your employees actually matters to me. What you're doing from a broader kind of environment perspective or sustainability, that matters to me as well. And a lot of the underlying data to be able to then show me that, okay, these are companies that actually, when we think about diversity in terms of their employee base, or we think about what they're doing from a climate change perspective, I want to understand that as I look at my investment portfolio and what I'm doing there. So I would say that there's been a lot more of a voice of the consumer in the process, and a creation of what are companies that they want to work with, what does it look like, as well as the fact that consumers have a lot more choice as well, right? We're seeing new entrants to the financial services space, right? People like Apple, Google, etc., getting involved in things that were not necessarily part of their suite. So I think it's a healthy tension that's there, and we've been seeing some creative solutions coming out of that as well.
Perfect. I'd love to ask the other panelists as well, as we think about trust and how sharing data is an important aspect of everything that we're doing. Kristin and Anastasia, if you could also share your perspectives.
I think one of the big questions is for all the consumers that are using some sort of device to track their fitness or to track their health, whether that be using a wearable on your on your finger or your wrist. The question is, for a lot of people, is where is the data going? Who is using this data? Yes, it's helping me, but where is it going and who's reading it? So from a privacy perspective, I think, as an industry, we really need to think about, let's use the data for good. Can we have our data empower clinical trials? Even just as an average consumer, can I participate in something that will actually help, develop the next therapeutic for a heart condition or whatever it might be? Not just have the pharmaceutical companies of the world doing it, but is there a way to use the data for greater good?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because absolutely is having data that's usable for us to make decisions and use AI to enable us to make the best data-driven, evidence-based decisions is what it's all about. And one of the things that people worry about is that trust. How do you trust? What are people going to do with the data? What is AI telling us? And is AI making the decisions for us? What AI is doing is helping us use all the data, because remember, 90% of all the data that we have available now was generated in the last 2 years, and I'm not even going to give you the number of just how much data that is. But it's not AI in the end that is making the decisions. Sure, AI is going to make the decision whether to unlock your phone for you or not, right? Okay, so there are some decisions that AI is making. But by and large, what AI is doing is to help us assemble all the data and information that is available that we can't process quickly enough to then allow us, as the human in the middle, allow us to make the decision, or allow the doctor to make the decision, or allow the financial institution to make the decision. If AI identifies that there's some unusual activity on your credit card, it may put a hold on your credit card, but it's not going to cancel your credit card until you call your credit card company and you speak to someone, and that gets resolved. Same with healthcare. If the data is used and an AI algorithm identifies that you have a genetic mutation that might have you susceptible to a disease, or that something was seen in an x-ray, it's not going to make the decision of what to do. It's going to refer to the doctor or the healthcare provider, who will then review that data and take the next step, maybe request additional tests. So we need to not be afraid of AI, not be afraid of what AI does. And in order for AI to do what it needs to do, and for us to be able to make the best informed decisions, we need availability of the data. We need the data to be clean, available, standardized, and that's what we do before we actually worry about what the decisions are.
We realize we could probably talk about all of these in depth for an hour.
Okay.
And you bring up this an interesting point, Anastasia, around this idea of our appetite for a false negative or a false positive, but as it relates to AI. It's interesting, when we think about, particularly for health, if my watch or a device were to tell me that I needed to go to the emergency room falsely versus if my credit card doesn't swipe, we're in a little bit of a different term. But I thought it would be interesting to sort of pivot and think about AI for good. There's so many aspects of this that I think are accretive to living better lives and being better contributors to society. So I'll start with you, Keri, and ask everyone to kind of have their own lens on this. But as you think about manifestation of AI for good, how do we leverage that? And what are some of the things that you're sensing in financial services?
Thanks. Actually, I'll share with you just a recent effort that we did. We in partnership, Accenture in partnership with our World Economic Forum, and we had leaders across financial services as well. And we were looking at the democratization of capital markets, and basically looking at the retail investor. And a big point of this was also looking at how do you make capital markets and investing more accessible for all. And I think key part of that was, some of the tooling and the interfaces and the way that people are interacting with the information. But I would say education was a key part of that. And if I think about just AI and the manifestation of that, what we were seeing was there's a lot of information, for example, available on social media, right? People sharing that. People use that as well to be able to work the markets, which I will not get into. But there's a lot of information out there and a lot of, I would say, misinformation as well. And so, as we think about education, is there some way that we can actually help the consumer to understand, yes, educating on, different investment vehicles, but what are even valid sources that you should look at in terms of information, and helping a little bit with the curation of that, as well as then for the average retail investor to let them know, is it okay to enter crypto, and how do I actually get started? So I like what Anastasia was saying, which is AI is a great equalizer. And I think a big component of that is, as we think about education and accessibility, leveraging AI to help bring some trust into it, in terms of curating information and understanding what really is valid and what is more speculative, what sources you can trust with that, but also how do I actually bring education to different people and use mechanisms such as, for example, augmented reality, virtual reality, right? Leveraging the metaverse, some of these new ways of communicating to be able to get the information out there.
Good. And as we think about data for good and how having more data and having the ability to be empowered by that data help guide us, we think about having data to help us all make better health decisions, whether if we're trying to lose weight, we're trying to improve a chronic disease. Regardless if you have a wearable or a computer or even a phone, being able to give guided recommendations for people across the world to make better health choices and to be aware of their health is absolutely critical. When we have a shortage of primary care physicians in the US, and it sometimes takes 2 to 3 months to go see a provider, being able to ask a question or being able to look for advice, given all of the data that we have, is really critical for AI.
Because you're shaking your head.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. So where do we even begin, right? With AI for good, we could be here all day if we take it systematically. So I'll start with using data to help us develop the vaccine so that we could get it out to the patients in record time, right? In months instead of years. So we used data and we used AI for good, right? To help us develop the vaccine. You can take it on a different dimension. I work with a not-for-profit organization called TIP Global Health, where what they do is they use data and in order to educate healthcare workers and mothers to reduce the amount of malnutrition in their kids and to reduce HIV transmission from mother to children. They actually, through data, not AI necessarily in that case, but through data, were able to bring that rate down to zero. So those are examples, many other examples where AI can help us get medicines, important medicines, to rural areas that don't have access to doctors, that don't have access to medicine, and help us get that there faster than we could have in any other way. Yeah, I think I'll stop there, but I could definitely talk about AI for good for hours.
Just add one quick point, sir, if I could, which is when we talk about AI for good, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about responsible AI. And I think that's a growing practice and program around it. And simple examples around that is just as we have access to all of this information and also sensitive information about people, how do we make sure that we're using it in the right way, right? And one part of it also, if I can give an example, is if I said yes to the loan for Tracy and then no to Kristin for the loan, why did I say yes to Tracy and why did I say no to Kristin? Was it fair? Was there any bias in that decisioning, etc.? Responsible AI covers that as well. So I think it's putting some guardrails also, as we have more of this information, we have fast decision making. How do I make sure that it is also fair?
Great point, Keri. I think in a time where AI is pervasive, every moment we have to be thinking about the responsible lens. I was working with an organization that works in and around vaccines and plasma, and someone who was newer to the industry said, well, why don't we just route it wherever it's most profitable? Which is completely inequitable, unfair, and not the right thing. And it wasn't that individual was trying to do anything nefarious. It was just they had come out of industry, and if they were routing cars or they were thinking about other consumer goods, it wouldn't have been necessarily something that would have created a great divide, or maybe one that was so important. And so I love this idea of responsible AI. I think if we have a couple of minutes, we'll go out to questions for the audience, but to get us started, I'd love to ask everyone, one of the things that I hear a lot around AI is that it's taking jobs away. And I'm smiling because I have a very strong opinion about this, but maybe, Kristin, if you could start and ask the other panelists, how do you see AI as a constriction for talent, or do you have a different opinion?
I think it's only going to add more opportunity. I think most of you would agree. We have so much data, we now need to interpret that data. So how can we help people make decisions with it? How do we use it for innovation? There's an incredible amount of opportunity to be able to look at the data, use the data to figure out, okay, so what's next in women's health? How do we take what we know about women going through, even we have talked a lot about fertility today, but we haven't talked about menopause. And there's so much opportunity in all of these different ways that we can use data that there's going to be a lot of opportunity with jobs.
Absolutely. I think, AI being the great equalizer, I think it's going to help us all do the higher value activities while we have AI and technology actually do the more routine type of activities. And for example, with understanding disease better, with the human in the middle, the human isn't going away, but it's actually helping us find the nuggets of information, helping us make better use of the data, helping us make the decisions. So absolutely.
The part I do on this as well is I do it as kind of coaching to maybe all of us, which is like we don't live in a static world, and we're going to need to be continual learners, right? And so I think we have to be able to continue to adapt. So I think, yeah, some jobs will no longer exist, but new jobs will take their place, right? And I think there's just going to be a continual skilling, upskilling, etc. that will need to be there. And I just think that's just part of life to continue to be relevant. But I look at AI as an enabler, a partner, and we will just need to continue to grow also.
Yeah, I will share that most data scientists are still doing too much data cleansing, data reconciliation, and doing not the things that they went to school for and aspire to do. So I actually consider AI to be a great retention vehicle. So if anyone has questions.
Thank you guys for all of your insights today. I used to work at Microsoft's AI for Good Research Lab, so I definitely know that there's like an infinite amount of amazing use cases, for the applications of AI across the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. My question to you guys is, a lot of my friends who aren't as, familiar with how the applications of AI are being used in corporations, they get really freaked out about the uses in social media and how, like on Instagram, you can talk about something and not even be on the app and it'll come up as an advertisement. How do you guys resolve those privacy issues? Maybe in just like your day-to-day life, or how do you communicate them to people who aren't as familiar?
You mentioned responsible AI.
Sure, thanks, I appreciate that. My fellow panelists. When you were asking the question, the first answer that came to my mind, I'm going to share it with you, which is, we do have to read the fine print. And I think there's been a lot more regulation also about this, to have internet companies to be very clear about permission to use information and how they're going to be using information, right? But we also have to kind of click the boxes to be able to understand what is it that we're agreeing to, as well as do that regularly. One of the major providers, I'm not going to call the company's name, but they do change their policies quite a bit, so we have to kind of stay vigilant with that. That's kind of one answer to your question. The other answer to the question, if you think about like sci-fi, AI, all of that, and we get some of that from the movies, it can seem very scary, or even just in companies when people hear about it, they're like, oh, robots are going to take over my job and stuff like that. And I think part of it is just disaggregating the problem and giving people some very practical examples, which is then some of these manual tasks that you yourself are bored with, like let the computer do that and then empower you to do something else. So multiple level answer, but that's kind of how I would do it. I think for me, I find sometimes with FAIR, if you start to break it down and ask the why and those type of things, people start to get a little bit more comfortable. But if they keep it at that high level of aggregation, then yeah, it becomes a monster, right? Which it is not. Anyone else wants to add to that?
I'll add to it just so we don't leave you out there by yourself. So responsible AI and ethical AI is something that the whole world is now awake to. And we're partnering actually with many think tanks and across industries, across all industries, to actually define some policies, some guidelines, and Pfizer has some guidelines that we've published, and other companies have guidelines that we've published about what responsible AI is and what ethical AI is. So you're going to see much more of that responsible AI capabilities to make sure that what is put out there by companies and what we're using is responsible and ethical.
And I'll just share one thing is that one of the best things that organizations can do to mitigate and be more responsible is to have the individuals that are building the algorithms, building the code, developing to be diverse in and of themselves. There's quite an old story of an organization that was creating sensors for the first generation of when you would put your hand under the soap so that it dispensed automatically. And everybody that was on that team was white. And so they rolled these out in a major metropolitan area, and they didn't work because most people's skin was not who they tested it on. And no one in that entire group thought to think we should try it on different colors of skin. And these are the things that, building a spirit of curiosity, embracing a broader team and asking a lot more questions is absolutely imperative now. I think having, we're talking here today a lot about gender equity, but I think this is about a broader discussion around equity as it relates to age and race and gender and preferences and everything that could be related into that. And it's important that you bring all of those diverse perspectives to codify on the front end, and then continue to keep asking the question over and over and over again. Because we're seeing things in, particularly in scenarios that don't drive across industries, that the things that you might think are equitable in healthcare might not be equitable in financial services, et cetera. And so continuously, having that question rather than this idea that it's done or that it would stay stale. There's reasons why some organizations are constantly updating their rules and their security privacies is because they're also learning as they become more mature. So, hey, other questions?
Thank you very much for your insights. Absolutely fascinating. I'm Sue. I work at MediaCom, a media advertising agency. And obviously AI is only as good as the data that goes into it. Are you concerned that we're going to get a two-nation world, the world that contributes their data and then the world of people who don't contribute their data, either because of privacy concerns or because of their age, because of their lack of accessibility to technology, and so that major decisions will be made by companies, by governments, by organisations, but purely on behalf of those whose data is accessible?
I think that's a great question. It's an important one. It's something that the U.S. government is thinking about. For all of you who are aware of the All of Us program, really trying to get a representation across the United States of everyone participating in this major genomic experiment. It sounds a little bit scary. It's not scary. It's absolutely vital for all of us to be able to participate, share your data so that the data can be used and it doesn't become, as you said, a nation that's divided from the data perspective. Those who have data, those who have not.
I think I'll take the mic.
Thank you. Okay.
Get your question.
No, thank you. I think I'm a data scientist myself. I think what exactly you said is probably not accurately correct, because that's exactly what we're concerned about. I just came back from the military meeting, MHS. So when the AI is linked to the genetic data, that's much more dangerous than we thought. So what's actually it's incredibly happening in China is they can design and develop viruses that can be targeted to a certain population. And that's what they have already done with some Uyghur population as well. So that's very, very dangerous. And actually, the way she said, it is always that the AI is as good as your data, right? Because you put garbage in, garbage out. So you just put, like no matter you do a mediation analysis or a regression analysis, which is basically we do, it depends on the data you get. And in link to that, also now NIH has a big push, that's why any trial you conduct in this country, there have to be at least 40% of the data, 40% of the subjects has to be women. Because most of the data we get, and unfortunately, I think this is a great forum, you can talk to your colleagues. Any clinical trials, women are not that interested to come and enroll. So that's why we need a lot of data, like the way she said. So there are very few data we have from the women. And also there's another scary part to it is now probably like the way she said, it is like a very old technology, from 1930s in fact, they designed it. But now we didn't have the super computational power. Only when the I5, I7, they come out, that because we need to process the data quickly and efficiently. That's actually what happened very recently. Earlier, like, for example, your cell phone is more powerful than what the Pentagon had, like maybe 5-10 years ago, right? So that's the problem. And the only thing is, there got to be some nerds, or there would be some people, those who would be very interested to find out, write a code that they can decode whatever you put in AWS or anywhere in the cloud. So we are facing some challenges for sure, exactly on the AI. Who are the questions? Sorry for, I asked like so many questions. Okay.
No, sorry, after.
So my question is in a completely different area. So I know that 60% of the world has broadband, but that leaves 40% that does not. And many women are in underserved communities that don't have classes like advanced physics. And many of us who have teachers that are teaching us science, they're not wonderful teachers that are willing to be, patient and loving. For example, my science teacher told me, I know you'll do great in this class because you're pretty. So those types of things, that a lot of times women have to deal with. So I keep hearing things like, AI is a great equalizer, but we're looking at a world in which many people don't even have the internet, let alone access to science where they can learn things like AI. And so I'm curious, one, I love everything that you guys are saying, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say and all of the benefits of AI. But I'm also curious, when you say that 16% of women are on a 10-year path with AI, what can we do, those of us in this room, and also what are you doing to help address these issues where women are not getting access to this kind of education, access to broadband, access to an AI path. I hope that made sense.
Thank you so much for asking such a powerful question as we wrap up. It actually ties in. I was going to actually ask each of our panelists as we think, what is the one thing, if someone were interested or someone were trying to think about entering AI, which of course I believe everyone should at least have some AI in their lives. One tip or trick quickly, just that you think could be most impactful.
For me, I would say get started with learning. So explore some certification, and it can be something simple. There are lots of this that's accessible, I would say, online, which is just free tutorials, right? To start one area, one topic. I think as you start to look into that, break it down, you will see, okay, now I understand some of the components. Maybe it's not as hard as I thought, and then tag team on that with an answer to that question there. I would say people are more looking at also mobile applications, because even if may not have access to broadband, most people do have a cell phone, right? So there are things which are being designed that can actually be leveraged on a handheld device. And then in terms of, yes, I understand also about good teachers, not so great teachers, or teachers who think, well, you're never going to do advanced mathematics or whatever it is, right? So I think part of it is then investing and partnering with organizations who have intents and motives, which is to bring broader accessibility, whether that's Girls Who Code or different organizations, right? Which I would say that there are multiple of them coming up now.
My advice is don't be afraid to ask someone for a 10-minute conversation. Most people will say yes. If you give it a limited time, just go up to your neighbor, go up, ask your teacher, can we have a quick chat? I'm interested in AI. So that's my advice.
So to switch it up a little bit, to use something else, I'm going to say education. And to your point, your question earlier, I don't mean education in terms of taking a course. I mean education in terms of awareness. That awareness, if you haven't already contributed in some way to an NGO or not-for-profit, non-government organization, find one, get involved, and don't just contribute monetarily, although that helps. Contribute your time. Use your talent for good and go to those rural areas and help build that infrastructure that's going to bring healthcare to them. And keep in mind that in some of those rural areas, while they don't have the infrastructure, they also don't have the legacy systems that stop them from adopting new technology and adopting. So go to those areas, help them build and bring the new technology to them, and teach them what's good.
Wonderful. Well, in closing, I would just say that an amazing spirit of hope and gratitude to my co-panelist. I'll leave you with one data statistic. In the survey that I mentioned earlier, only 12% of organizations are truly mastering AI or what we would call achieving AI. And so to Anastasia's point that we have just begun to create enormous amounts of data, I think we're just beginning to tap the surface on AI, and I'm very excited to see the future for this, and grateful for the wonderful insights of Anastasia, Kristin, and Keri. Thank you so much, and thank you to the World Women Foundation.